Hey, how's it going, everybody? This is Jeff iNcontroL Robinson hitting you up with another Legacy of the Void balance update patch note video thing. These are, of course, unedited. Supposed to be pretty quick, but I'm so damn lengthy and wordy in the way I talk that it sometimes wanders on for a little while, but hopefully you enjoy that content. So today is 5/21/15, and we were just hit with a heads up on the changes and the thoughts on Legacy of the Void as we go forward. I just want to do a quick video discussing this and also give my thoughts on where I think Legacy of the Void is at, what's fun, what's not, and what you guys can kind of think about as we move forward. It's going to be a long closed beta, well, a long beta, excuse me. Who knows how long the actual closed beta portion will be, but we know that Legacy of the Void probably will not come out until at least the end of the year, if not even past that. Pure speculation. They haven't announced anything, but we do know that we're playing Heart of the Swarm at BlizzCon, and it would be very weird to release Legacy of the Void before that. But I guess it's possible. Let's get into the stuff that's been changed, though. First and foremost, Terran has been due for a new unit, and it has at least conceptually been unveiled as called the Liberator. The notes on it are, the Liberator is an AA splash damage unit that can target a specific ground location to deal high single target damage to enemy units in that location. I believe this to be an air-based unit. They kind of teased a starport the other day before this, so I think that's the case. Someone can correct me super fast if I'm wrong. So a lot of people are kind of calling it a pseudo-Valkyrie from Brood War, which was an AoE anti-air unit. The difference here, of course, is that the Liberator, it sounds like, has the option to target a specific area and do a lot of damage to that area. This effect in StarCraft 2 is quite powerful. We see it with the Ravager. The Ravager does a zoning out ability, and if you stay in that spot, we call it a skill shot because it doesn't target a unit itself, but rather a location. Then you're going to take a lot of damage, and this has huge effect across the board, but of course in ZVZ we see it the most, where Roach compositions are very prevalent. You mix in Ravagers, and now the micro becomes a little bit more intensive. It's a little bit more like, oh, okay, well, I got to get out of the way of that. Which can make things dicey. A lot of times we see Roaches cramming themselves closer in on each other, which is a lot less fun, because then there's no maneuverability at all, and the fight looks just ridiculous. Like, there are a bunch of ranged units running to smash their faces into each other because they want to get out of the way of the Ravager shots. But it's still pretty cool. It's a lot better than what it was. It used to be, you know, get a concave, have more Roaches, and then go. And that's it. That was the fight, and it would happen over and over and over again until someone died. And a lot of times, it felt like creep waves fighting creep waves, you know, from like a MOBA or something like that. It was not as interesting as I think a lot of people would hope. Of course, I'm being hyperbolic. There was a lot more nuance to those fights and matchups, but especially at the mid-tier, for a lot of people, it was actually just that. And then I think even at the highest levels, sometimes it would be just that simple. It's like, well, you made Roaches, I made Roaches. We both have generally good position here, and now we're supposed to trade out these Roaches because we want to add in Hydralisks, we want to add in Infestors and stuff like that. So let's just A-move into each other. And it was like as unelegant as that sounds. So, again, that's a long-winded way of saying that effect, that ability is quite powerful in StarCraft 2, and I like seeing that for Terran as well. I think it adds a whole lot of kind of dimensions to fights now. Like, all of a sudden you're trying to dodge the Liberator's ground shot. And then, of course, it adds that AoE anti-air ability, which, if you're a Zerg player in particular, this sounds really scary. Mutalisk already had Thors to contend with. They came out a little bit later. In the compositions is what I mean. Like, you're fighting Marines, and if those Marines get 2/2 upgrades or beyond, they were already gods in comparison to the Mutalisk, but now with Thors, they were like, oh gosh, well now I have to stay away from Thors. Not necessarily because a single shot will decimate me, but because several shots will actually decimate me if I'm the Mutalisk player. And they have such long range that that's really tough. So this seems a bit redundant. Then I think of it from the TVP perspective, and I'm not sure that they're super worried about air compositions. Like, oracles, of course, are really annoying, but you're not going to see a fleet of oracles flying around. The fleet that Terrans will see are carriers. So is this AoE ability, is it going to churn up interceptors? Does it actually do damage to the carrier itself that's significant in any way? If it does, that sounds awfully powerful. That sounds pretty ridiculous, and I don't think it does. Maybe it does a lot to interceptors, so we'll see. I feel like this is a little bit underwhelming, at least, again, in concept. We haven't seen the unit itself, so who knows? Maybe it's awesome design, maybe it moves really cool, and people can be really excited about that, and maybe the skill shot is devastating but hard to land, which is, again, a really fun thing in StarCraft 2, because in the hands of a true pro, you're landing more of those shots, and they're having more of an effect, but the rest of us can appreciate the skill it takes to land those shots. That kind of stuff's really, really exciting and cool for StarCraft. So obviously, we don't have the unit to work with right now, and this is just the concept. Conceptually, I'm pessimistically optimistic, if that makes any sense at all. I have my doubts that this is going to be something that Terran players are super exciting and happy about. As a a non-Terran player, a Protoss, I would tell you that it doesn't like sound any alarm bells. I'm not at the top of the highest Protoss pylon screaming out to the other Sons of Ire like, "Oh God, guys, what do we do?" Like ringing a bell. No, it's not. It's gonna be fine. So the next change they talk about is mech, air, and ground upgrades are split again with this note. With the updates to the starport units as well as the Liberator add, we felt the starport is rounded enough to split into two different upgrades again. This will create more specific choices in unit composition and strategies in Terran matchups. Our hope here is that we see a good variety in the barracks factory starport units be used in various matchups and situations. And this has been the white whale of Terran for a long time. To make it so that not just bio and mech compositions are viable, but even like air is viable. You could have a Terran air army. And I think they've come a long way in doing that. The Banshee late game speed upgrade is very powerful. We've seen that in Legacy of the Void. The battlecruisers being able to teleport with invincibility anywhere on the map, even without having vision of it, for 125 energy, yeah, that's pretty powerful as well. The battlecruiser, of course, in and of itself is quite powerful. And now we're going to have an AoE unit that will be added to the mix, which again kind of rounds that out. Banshees have air to ground, pretty strong damage, although they're a little bit glass cannons. Battlecruisers all around very strong. They have the long range of the Yamato, and then they have just good damage output while being very durable. Ravens, of course, we've seen to great success in use, although they enjoyed a slight nerf in that some of their abilities had a decreased time span. And now they're talking about splitting up the upgrades. They're trying to sell this as a positive, when obviously this is a nerf to Terran in general. Being able to upgrade both air and ground mech upgrades and armor with just 2 upgrades is pretty damn powerful, and we've seen a huge change in that. That has made mech both air and ground. I call mech mech is air and ground, by the way. It's made it a lot more viable and very powerful, but what we have seen is lately, especially at the highest levels, even in Heart of the Swarm, but a little bit less there, more in Legacy of the Void, we've seen this to be not imbalanced necessarily, but it's made games really stagnant. Like Terran is very much so encouraged with mech, because it's so hard to remake those armies, to very slowly push to expansions, to go pick off a couple expansions where they can. Harass kind of falls by the wayside. Just a lot of stacked defenses, a lot of planetary, a lot of missile turrets, and then a gigantic gelatinous ball of huge damage output coming from a mech army that Terran, well, if they're going bio, Zerg and Protoss all just kind of have to avoid, otherwise they die. So with this, it slows that down a little bit and makes it a little bit more questionable as to whether or not a Terran can do that. The problem is, a lot of times Terrans walk that fine line anyways, where yes, mech is super powerful, but it's hard to set up, and bio is just generically good against everything. So that's why we see a lot of bio and very little mech. But when we see too much mech, then it also depends on the map. If the map's super confined and the Terran can take 4 bases no problem, then it becomes really ridiculous and really hard. So it's a conundrum. It's been a conundrum. In general, I'll tell you that this change is a nerf to Terran, and Terran has been dominating in closed beta Legacy of the Void right now. Is it because mech is so powerful? I'm not entirely sure. I think it's more that the Cyclone itself is still super powerful. I think the maps are quite bad. So I think those are things that we look to, not necessarily that Terran mech is overpowered. I don't think that's the case. So this might be something that's reverted back. It's not a huge nerf at the end of the day. It's a pretty big one. Certainly it is. But it's not like they didn't remove the Cyclone or something like that and then say, please still go mech, we really want you to. Like, it's not like that. So we'll see. Terran players are, of course, going to be really upset with this because they had a really shiny toy they were playing with for a while there, getting 2 upgrades in 1 is pretty amazing. But this was taken away from us, so we'll see. Cleaned up structure subgroup priorities. They say, we heard your feedback regarding subgroup priorities for structures in StarCraft 2. We did a cleanup pass on all 3 races in this area, so please check it out. After these changes, subgroup priorities will generally be as follows: production buildings, then global upgrade buildings, then buildings with one-time upgrades. So I myself don't actually hotkey buildings together. Like, I have my Robo on one, my Stargates on another. I actually don't hotkey gateways because we just have a W for that because we're spoiled. But I know a lot of top Terran players, Zerg players, and Protoss players do actually do that, and it perhaps is even the better way to go about it. So I'm not saying mine's superior. I'm just saying I don't do it myself. And I know that a lot of times tabbing through that becomes a little bit of a burden. You can do some misclicks. So they cleaned it up a little bit. Just a general good thing. I don't think anyone's going to complain about that. Let's move on to the next one. Geyser amount increased to 2,000 to match the ratio of new minerals. And this is the note they had. We're currently seeing that the last mineral amount tweaks are working out well for the game. Therefore, we cleaned up the Vespine geyser amounts to be equal, to the ratio of the current mineral patches per base. Just a slight increase. I believe it was 1,500 per base before this. They reduced down to that, I want to say that's how much it was. Maybe it was a little bit more. But they're just upping it back again. I don't know. I'm pretty okay with this in practice. I've been playing a lot of Legacy of the Void lately. The bases don't mine out nearly as fast. It used to be like if you're doing a 2-base timing attack, your bases are mined out afterwards. Like minute 10, 11, your main base is gone, bro. You better have done a lot of damage because now you're on 1-base economy. And that felt... I actually liked it at first. I thought it was super intense and incredibly fast. I was actually feeling the stress of, having to expand all the time as a Protoss player, but really for everybody. I think ultimately it was a little bit too severe for the general masses. I think people found that they had no time to breathe and really focus on any kind of strategy at all, and were just having a tough time keeping up. So I think this revert back, although slightly, is in the right direction. Now you can do a 2-base timing attack, and your main base isn't mined out, but you've got a couple of minutes, and then it is. And you really need to start thinking about taking a third, or if you're going to keep up with that 2-base timing attack and follow it up with more. It puts a little bit edge to it. The game still feels really fast, just not quite as breakneck speeds that it was when Legacy of the Void Closed Beta first came out. So ultimately good. The next one is Roach burrow move now requires an upgrade again. This is a revert back, by the way. It used to always require that. Roach burrow move is another area we've cleaned up. We felt the double buff in this area was too much. To remedy this, we just... you know what? I'm not going to read it. It's a long-winded way of saying it was too good. Okay, thank you. I agree with them. There's a lot of people in the comments, especially, have found that yes, I'm a Protoss player, but I'm not so. I'm not like a Protoss. I'm not lobbying to the government for better Protoss abilities. I'm not. I don't make these videos because I want to, persuade Blizzard to make Protoss the best race. So let's just leave that there. It's really adorable and funny every time I talk about the other races. People are like, well, he's Protoss, so he can't be trusted. It's like life's a little bit more complicated than that. It probably was a little bit too strong. A lot of the 2-base timing attacks, or any kind of gateway timing attack whatsoever, in particular, I'm not sure how it functioned in the ZVT matchup, was immediately put down by just a single upgrade. They haul butt when they burrow and move. They are going fast. They increase the speed of that, and they are going very fast. So the things they could do with that was really great. It was one of those no-brainer upgrades that are so good that you should just get it every time. So instead of it being like a decision the Zerg made that they are then capitalizing on, it was more just this is generically what they have, and it just kind of shuts down a lot of things. For one upgrade and then units that they make. They should always do that. Making it 2 separate upgrades, both burrow and burrow movement, means that it's much more of a poignant, like, they chose to do this, and if you're not prepared for that, or it counters what you're doing, then good on them. They're being rewarded for their decision-making, you're being punished. Again, I think that in general is good for StarCraft 2. Imagine, like, Protoss had an upgrade that just, like, generically raises everyone's shields by 50. It's like, well, yeah, you just get that every time. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I know what people are going to say. There is that upgrade. No, there is not. There is making shields +1, which is for everybody because all Protoss units have shields. But imagine one that's just like across the board. Everybody gets +50 shields. It would be a stupid good upgrade that you would rush to every single time because just across the board it makes everything better. And, of course, this is a bad example at the end of the day because it's not nearly as overpowered. The point I'm trying to illustrate, and apparently doing a very poor job of, and this is probably why I should script out some of these videos, is that Zergs generally go Roaches in the early game, especially in ZVP, and if you can make them burrow and move, and that counters a lot of scary strategies, but also can just flat out beat the Protoss in many ways, you're going to do it. By breaking them apart, making them 2 upgrades, a little bit more pricey, it still has the same power, but it takes longer to achieve, which opens up gateway timing attacks all of a sudden, because now that time allotted to the Protoss to do some damage is widened, so it's just probably a good idea. The next one down, Swarm Host doesn't burrow move, and they go on to talk about how, well, I'll read this one. The new Swarm Host is looking good so far, but we wanted to reduce the number of complexity on the unit by removing its ability to burrow move. Going forward, if Swarm Host needs to be changed, we'll be looking to make numbers to make numbers changes. I'm actually reading that correctly. It's just not worded correctly. And avoiding adding rule changes that add to the complexity of the unit. Alright, that wasn't written very well. I don't like the reasoning for this. They're like, it's too complex. We want to make it simpler. This is a nerf. Its ability to move below the ground, pop up, launch out its locus, and then move burrow again is extremely powerful. I only faced it a few times, and I'll talk about why, the Lurker, in a little bit after we get through these patch notes. But in general, I don't know. I'm not a huge. It seems like a little bit of a cop out. Yeah, the game could get too complex, but the idea that the Swarm Host is too complex because it can burrow and then move is odd to me. I'm almost like dumbfounded by it. It's just such a weird response. In general, though, I will tell you that this is good for everybody else, bad for Zerg. It was really powerful that they could burrow move. They were exposed when they were above ground launching their locust, and they were safer underground because they could kind of do a surprise attack type of thing. They want them to be more of a mobile harass unit now, as opposed to what they were and are in Heart of the Swarm and other games, which is just, well, not other games, they weren't in Wings of Liberty, but like a static, just we launch mindless things and they go do stuff, and that's horrible and boring. They want them to be more micro-intensive and decision-making intensive. And I think by taking away burrow movement, you're reducing that a little bit. But I don't think anyone's going to lose any sleep at the end of the night. There's nobody out there that was like, oh, my burrowed Swarm Host strategies are gone! Like, there shouldn't be anybody that's freaking out about it. Missile turret build requirement changed back to engineering bay. That time it was my fault. Just to revert back, it used to always require engineering bays. They took that away. They made it the barracks that required missile turrets. I don't know. I don't think this. I think this change is a lot like the bunker build time. Not even conundrum, but just like obsession that Blizzard had all throughout Wings of Liberty. It was like every single patch was major change, and oh, by the way, the bunker now salvages at minus 0.0000756 points of a decibel of a second of a minute. And we were really excited about that change. Like, this is, I don't know. Terrans don't want engineering bays in none of the matchups. They want them in all of them, especially in TVZ. If they're going bio in TVT. If they're not going bio, I guess it's 125 mineral burden. And then in TVP, of course, if they're going bio, they want that there as well. And if they're not, 125 mineral burden. I don't think this is a big deal. Oracles are super prevalent, so it was nice because that is the biggest place where this is going to be felt. Proxy Oracle are just straight up Oracles getting there at a time when they're just setting up their second base and they have Marines at their disposal, but they're not necessarily at the engineering bay phase. Forcing that engineering bay, then missile turrets, does open up some more timings for Oracles and does make it a little bit harder on Terran. So this is a generic. I mean, it goes without saying, but let's just point it out. This is a nerf to Terran. This does set them back slightly, but I think what I like about this, and if you're a Terran player, you should be pretty okay with, Terran is dominating Legacy of the Void. Terran and Zerg, they're significantly more powerful than Protoss. Not saying that because I'm a lobbyist for Protoss. It is actually the truth. And they're looking at ways to slow that down and to make it more balanced, and I think the changes are pretty slight and insignificant, which is great. You know, there are times when games are in beta like this, especially closed beta, which we're spoiled to be exposed to, where it's not that way. These big there's like gigantic changes that swing the balances up and down. We've experienced that in StarCraft 2 as well, but they're taking a much more cautious approach this time around, and I think that's really good. So I want to close out the video with a couple of thoughts on Legacy of the Void as it stands right now. This is, of course, before this patch is implemented, but with this patch in mind. I've been playing a lot lately. One of the things I've noticed is that Lurkers are extremely powerful, especially in the ZVP matchup, but I can't imagine they're terrible in the ZVT matchup. Coming with the ability to hold position is really cool. That's super, super strong, and, you know, especially in ZVT, where Terrans don't necessarily come with detection, they're not rolling out with Ravens too often in their biocompositions. I could see this being a game changer, something that they have to really look out for. Lurkers burrowed, and it doesn't even take like 10 Lurkers, it can be like 3 or 4, and then they just whoosh right over the Terran army. Think Baneling bombs, only with, you know, a lot more utility and a lot more range. Their trail of spikes goes pretty far, and it does a ton of damage. So, you know, 3, 4, 5 of those guys, they're going to shut down Terran armies. And right now, Zerg aren't really using them in ZVT as much as I think we will be seeing them. They're using them in ZVP, where they're very powerful. They have the same range as a Colossus with its range reduction as it stands right now. And they shut down Adepts, which I'll talk in a second. But I'll talk about in a second, excuse me. But they really shut down everything. Like I'm not even complaining. It's just like Sentry, Stalker, Zealots, Colossus. They just destroy them all. Adepts, destroy them all. So of course Disruptors are going to be nice here because they are, you know, a burrowed unit that's hard to move around. So you're going to want to look to those Disruptors to get them out of their location. Once they're above ground, they're extremely exposed and can be killed. But I do want to caution people. I think this is something that will be changed. I think Lurkers are too strong as they stand. They, too, are in that weird spot where if you nerf them too much, then, of course, they're pretty useless. And if they remain as they are, do they break the game? Not really, but they probably are a little bit too strong. So I would like little nerfs to them, like it takes them longer to burrow, which still makes them just as powerful below the ground, but it makes them more of a risk when they pop up and are like, oh god, we gotta move, a Disruptor's coming, or the Protoss is kiting our army, the Terran is kiting our army, we need to get up and move forward, and then all of a sudden you're picking off Lurkers and you're reducing their effectiveness. And with that little bit of risk-reward going in favor of the, you know, the other guy, the guy that doesn't have Lurkers, I think that'll be much more interesting and cool. Let me know what you think. And then the next thing I want to talk about real quick is the Adept. If you've watched my other Legacy of the Void videos, this is a unit that I've talked about in such ways as it's like it's a confused Reaper, it seems pretty useless, unexciting. Like, I was pretty down on it. Now, it seems to be a pretty big staple of PvP. You're seeing it a lot in PvT as far as, like, just being a Zealot replacement. It's just got a good range attack, it's strong against Marines, but most importantly, it tanks damage amazingly well. And then, excuse me, in ZVP, we see it again as kind of a Zealot replacement, very strong at facing Roach Hydra compositions. It's good in the early game. It tanks so much damage that Zerglings have a tough time chopping them down. They seem very strong. This is a unit that is hard countered by the Lurker, though. Just kind of keep that in mind. They evaporate. Like 4 Lurkers shoot, all your apps are gone. They just disappear. They've become more of a tank unit with that plus 50 shield upgrade that they can get. They already have, I think it's 180 life in general between shields and life, which is a lot for a unit that costs 100 minerals, 25 gas. And then what's really cool is their synergy with the army composition. They have a ranged attack, so they're not running into as much stuff. They're not getting stormed by their own Templar. They stay a little bit more out of like Disruptor's way, because the Disruptor explosion can hurt Protoss units as well, friendly units. So it's just kind of a generically good unit. And then we're seeing some pretty cool stuff with its psionic... I still don't know the name. I really got to know the name. I call it like Shade Walk and stuff like that. That's of course not what it's called. But its ability to project itself forward and then move there. It's awesome. I was a part of Total Biscuit's clan war yesterday between EG and Root, and we saw some really cool applications from it from Kiwikaki, where it's like, I'm harassing this mineral line, I throw my projection into the main base. Do you go chase it knowing that the threat is about to be in there? Well, if you do, then I'm left alone in this base chopping down harvesters still, and I can cancel that too. So like that's a really cool addition that they added this. I didn't think it would have as much effect as it has had. And this is a unit that I especially feel like shines in the hands of a really creative and good player, especially in the early game. As it gets later, there's some cool stuff to be done with them, but just a little bit less so. They're just generically good at shooting. You should just always be shooting with them. So, anyways, I'm really enjoying Legacy of the Void right now. I don't play it for 10 hours a day because without ladder, the games are meaningless. You get a lot of people that'll just leave. A lot of people are just trolling. The MMR seems kind of messed up. I'll play a really bad player one game, and then I'll play like an absolute top-notch pro the next. And it's hard for me to gauge what's going on, because I'll off-race as Terran for 2 games, and one game I'm just destroying the guy with Widow Mines only, and the next game I'm dead in 2 minutes, because the other guy's just a hell of a lot better than me. So, you know, I'm lucky and fortunate to be included in the closed beta anyways, so I'm not really complaining. But what I am saying is that I'm having fun with it. It's cool. It's awesome to be a part of. But it's not my main grab right now. I'm still playing Heart of the Swarm because I like that competitive atmosphere, and I like knowing that this is what people are doing right now. So, just some thoughts on that. Go ahead. This ended up being a long video, by the way, but that's not really a huge surprise at all. It really isn't. Hope you guys enjoy this. Check out some of the other videos. Every time that we talk, you know, Legacy of the Void takes a change, I'll talk about it. I still plan on doing some other stuff in the content section as well, but that's for another day. All right, thanks guys for tuning in, and I'll talk to you later.